I'm just going to bring in Joe Pisapia, KC Bubba, and Matt Williams. Thank you guys so much for being patient with that. We'll probably give you a few minutes at the back end as well. But really, thank you guys for being here. I'm just going to get out of here now. I'm going to let you start. So take
We're
it
going to
away.
get booed for making Chamberlain leave.
I don't know. All I know is I can't wait to see the YouTube comments when that gets posted. And the fact that Nick said he can't wait to go back and watch it again, I got to worry a little bit about too. Like, what is he going for the stats? Is he just sticking around for the manly physique that
He
Alex
said
Chamberlain is
physics, and
sporting
I
right there?
blacked out, so I have no idea what he's talking about.
Well, I don't know about you guys. I mean, we're wearing shirts right now. We can take the shirts off. Pants
You
are
gotta pay
optional
extra
here.
for that.
Well, look, we're here to support PitchCon and obviously help raise money for Feeding America. So please, I encourage everybody to go over to pitcherlist.com/PitchCon, and you can go ahead and make a donation there. Thanks again to Nick Pollock and all the friends putting this together for everybody. Great place to get some baseball knowledge. Matt Williams, one of my favorite people in the industry. It's so nice to see you, Matt, and KC Bubba. I just spent an hour with you a few hours ago on the Fantasy Pros pod, so it's nice to see you again. But Matt Williams, I haven't seen you or talked to you in longer, so just checking in with you. How are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We're here to talk about a topic that I'm actually really against.
Good.
I think that hitting specific categories is just a terrible strategy, but we're going to talk you through it if that's the way you want to go.
Well, look, cat's out of the bag right now. So we're talking about hitter-specific category guys. And you know what? I understand not wanting to necessarily go after that as a strategy. But Bubba, at the end of the day, we all know every draft is kind of a live animal. Every single draft kind of evolves on its own as it's going. And when you look up at your roto rosters, whether it be head-to-head categories or whether it be season-long roto, there's definitely going to be some deficits there, and you're going to have to look for maybe a little bit of stolen bases, a little bit of batting average, a little bit of this, a little bit of that towards the end to kind of bump up. So even though, as Matt's saying, it's not the strategy you want to go in with, sometimes it might be a necessary evil, correct?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a necessary evil, and probably more so as you get into the season on your fab. Like, I need to address certain categories at that point in time. But I think what Matt's saying, and he can clarify it for me. But like when you're drafting early on, especially, you're not looking at like one category per se. Maybe you kind of have it in the back of your mind saying, "Hey, I need steals." Like, let's not be silly because they dry up. But you're going for like 4 or 5 category players more often than not. So it's not just like a single category that's doing it for you. But yeah, there's definitely going to be something as you build your team out. More and more people are using spreadsheets to look at 80th percentiles and stuff, and you're seeing you're like at certain deficits in certain categories as you're drafting, and you might adjust later in your draft for that. So we'll kind of point to a couple options. I'll just flat out say it now. There is a whole lot more than what we're going to mention when you look at people in your draft. Like we got like 2 each at this, and we could have probably talked for hours, but no one wants to hear that for this topic.
I don't know. Alex Chamberlain, I think I had a few hours there. I think
I would take my shirt off if we were here for more than an hour.
Hey, you know, I know he lives in Hawaii, so I can only assume that that's part of it. He's just bragging because it's about 17 degrees right here where I am in New Jersey right now. So he's just bragging. Matt, I'm going to let you defend yourself before we start to get to the specific players too. Talk to me about why it is that you want to try to avoid this if you have to, and why it isn't your strategy necessarily to go in. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, Bubba kind of nailed it. It's more common sense, but this is not something take all the people we're about to give you. We don't want you to take these players and be like, oh, these are great. I'm going to punt these categories until later. Don't do that. These are like, if you're in a bind, if you're in a pickle, these can bail you out. Cause I'm in a draft right now, and I just drafted Max Muncy because I was backed in a corner. I didn't want to do it. That's a terrible idea. But sometimes, desperate measures are required. And that's what we're here. We're here to save you in case you've backed yourself into a corner and you got to get rabid.
Well, it sounds to me like this is going to be very useful for a lot of people because that's what happens in every draft. You always get backed into corners at certain times and you have to make tough decisions. So let's start with batting average. Already something that a lot of people, especially in the metric world, hate already, but let's be honest, it's still out there. 5x5 is the most common format still. Most people are still playing batting average. So let's start with a couple guys and we'll give you a mid-range guy maybe and then a late round guy that might be able to help you in the batting average category. So Bubba, why don't you kick things off? Give us that mid-range draft value guy where if you're looking to bump up the BA, he might be helpful.
And I'll be honest, I probably cheated a little bit. He's probably more towards the front than the mid rounds, but he's like around 3 or 4 draft pick.
Trey Turner?
And no, I didn't go that far. I was gonna go Juan Soto just to pop this thing off, but no, I went Tim Anderson because he's one of those guys when you start talking shortstops. You mentioned Turner, you got Bichette's, Tatis's, even Bogarts. Bogarts is someone people like to clamor towards for batting average at shortstop. But what Tim Anderson can do is perennially hit for above 300 these last 3 seasons. Projection sites have him slightly lower, and people clamor because it's like, oh, his BABIP's so high, you can't do this over and over, but I think he's proven to us enough that this is kind of who he is now. He's a hard hitter, BABIP's through the roof. It adjusts to his batting average, and that's pretty outstanding. And he can also hit for decent power and speed and towards the top of that White Sox lineup. So he's a five category guy, but most importantly to me, what he does at a position that is top heavy and talked about a ton, and he kind of gets a little overlooked from time to time, is Tim Anderson is one of the more elite batting average assets out there. And even if he hits 290, not 300, in the world of dried up batting average we see these days with swing and miss, it's still an elite batting average. So he can be a guy, if you go and get heavy pitching early, or you go and gamble on certain bats for power ups or upside or whatever, you can go and get like a Tim Anderson and kind of bail yourself out a little bit, about around 3 or 4 probably, most likely.
And Tim Anderson's been very consistent the last 3 years too, hitting 335 in 2019, the shortened season 2020 hit 322, and then last year 309. He had certainly some really good stolen base numbers last year too, 18 there. And do you think Anderson gets overlooked, Bubba, because of the other, sexier names on the White Sox, the guys like the Luis Roberts and, the guys like, Jose Abreu's been a very steady presence in that lineup too. Is it just Anderson might be a victim of the fact that, between Eloy, between Robert, between Abreu, he's just kind of not a forgotten guy, but not quite as, I would say, alluring as some of the others.
He's probably not as alluring. He's fun. He's great. He's got great bat flip skills, so that's great with his BABIP skills. But I think one of the things that kind of deters people from Tim Anderson is his health. 123 games last year, 123 games in 2019. So you look at that and you're thinking, if you're going to draft a higher end shortstop, you kind of want that consistent playing time, like 140, 150 plus games. But at the same time, we talked about it before, and many have the replacement values and whatnot, and what he does supply even in 125 games or so is pretty darn elite for that position. So I think a lot of it's the team he's on with the star power and fun around there. Plus you throw the playing time concerns potentially, and I think that kind of deters people from him.
Well, if he plays more than 120 games this year, he's definitely going to score more than 100 runs. I think we could all agree on that.
We had a comment in the chat about his BABIP. That's something that deters people, but it's just a common mistake that there's BABIP, but there's no league average. It's a skill. He hits line drives. He has hard contact. He's very fast. He does, he's proven it year after year. He's the BABIP he has. That's his level. And it seemed doubtful in the beginning, but yeah, at this point, obviously that's just where he's at.
Yep, and also the speed matters too. I mean, batting average goes up because if you put the ball in play and you're faster than most guys, you can beat out ground ball in the hole between shortstop and third base. These things, have a way of working themselves out there for guys who have a little bit of wheels. And it looks like he's kind of really coming into his own here these last few years, finding a steady pace. Like Bubba said, though, I'd like to see a little bit more games. Matt, let's go to you for somebody for batting average. Who's your mid-range guy there you think can help people as they're getting into their draft?
My mid-range guy, I'm making reports here, is Alex Verdugo. Love him as a mid-round guy. And he's one of those ones where I think that's why I like to wait on outfield a bit, because there's a lot of good guys in this general area. In the minor leagues and in the major leagues, he's just pretty low strikeouts, decent walk. After his first couple of years with the Dodgers, where he didn't get a lot of at-bats, his last year with the Dodgers, first year over in Boston, batted 294 and 308. Last year, his first full season, 600 plate appearances, he batted 289, except he just has incredible contact. I think for his career, his contact percentage is over 91.2%. The last 3 years, 93.7, 91.3, 90.7. So some people will look at his non-impressive total, 289, 13 home runs, 6 stolen bases. I think there's more power there. It's not the greatest park in the world for him to be in, but he'll give you a little bit of stolen bases, which, a 5 is not a 0. They add up. But the 289 I actually think is really low. I think this one, you look at the 294 and 308, while that would be great for a mid-round guy, I think there's a lot more in the tank there. I mean, I think he has the skill in one of those high BABIP years. Blake Snell won a Cy Young because of his peripherals are off. Sometimes you have those one-offs. He has the skill and the line drive ability, I think, to go up there towards a batting title. Not saying you draft him expecting that, but I think he has that in him. So yeah, I think for someone that gives you a little power, a little speed, you can count on around a 300 batting average from him in a good lineup. And you never know. He's a better leadoff option than Enrique Hernandez, and I think he should lead off for Boston. So you could get this giant pop even with even more runs. So yeah, I like Verdugo quite a bit.
I want to ask you a question about Verdugo because the splits in 2020 hit left-handed pitching at a 320 clip. And I remember that year having him in DFS lineups and just loving that because people were shying away from him on those nights. The algorithm was discounting him and he was fantastic value. Then last year, all of a sudden, that fell off. And I understand 2020 was a small sample size, but in 2021, against left-handed pitching, it fell off precipitously. He went down to 228. So he still hit 321 against right-handed pitching. So what do you make of that split, Matt? Is that something that concerns you at all going into this year?
No, I mean, not really. It's something that I think is helping to depress his overall value. I think he will bounce up a little bit. His BABIP was like somewhere, was it down in, trying to find the splits here. So I'm looking at 268, which he didn't perform well. So that's not a big shocker. His WOBA was only 246 as well. So yeah, I think that he's not someone who's going to have even splits, but I do expect that to bounce way up, which I think speaks to more where I believe that he has that batting average ceiling. Just take that 289 and just take him to his career norm versus left-handers. And, you got someone cranking above 300 pretty easily. So yeah, I don't expect him. The power is something he definitely has more power versus right-handers, but yeah, again, that's who's going to be facing more often than not. But as long as he can just get to acceptable, his average will be over 300.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I agree with you too. That I think that I'd love to see him hit leadoff in that Red Sox lineup. That would be a huge win for all of us in the fantasy community. I like his steady OBP, makes good contact, as you said. He's got a little pop, a little bit of speed as well. I mean, 5 is nothing to shrug at. Like you said, they all end up at the end of the day adding up. So let's go to another guy here for batting average, Bubba. Give me somebody a little bit later in the draft since you cheated on the first one. You better go deep on number 2.
He's going around pick 200 in the month of January on NFBC, and that's Gene Segura, guy that seems to get overlooked time and time again when you're looking at draft boards because people are like, he's boring. He used to have second base, third base eligibility. I think going into this year, he's just second base, so that might deter a few people. But he hit 290 last year. In 19, he hit 280, 304, 300, 319. That seems pretty darn good for full seasons of baseball. And he chips in double-digit homers. Mm-hmm. Last year, only 9 steals, but prior to that, double-digit steals for like 7 straight seasons. So this is one of those guys that could potentially be a 280-plus hitter. Depends on where he hits in the Phillies lineup, but you never know. They might put him up there, towards the top of the order because Kutch is gone for now, and that could just lead to more run production and a very, very potent lineup with, Hoskins and Harper and company and Real Muto. So Segura is one of those guys that just steady Eddie, continues to get the job done, gets on base, scores runs, and contributes a little bit in all the categories for you that you can get much, much later in your draft. So I'm a big fan of Gene Segura later on at the middle infield. It was more fun when he had multi-position eligibility, but still at second base, middle infield option late in drafts. I like some Gene Segura.
Here's a question for you, Bubba. What happens if, we actually get spring training games? And what happens if we start to see him hit towards the top of that order? How high up would he start flying up draft boards if that sort of a spring lineup started to surface on multiple occasions?
I would imagine at least a good 30 to 40 spots if we knew he was leading off, but you never know. It's like people get so much middle infield early. We talked about shortstop. You're probably not drafting him as your second baseman unless you're going to be like, you know what, he's this year's Colton Wong or something like that where you kind of wait on him. So it's because he's 32, he's going to be 33. People kind of just get soured on guys like that, and they just kind of look past him for the shiny new toy. So I don't think he'll be a massive, massive riser, but you might get like 20, 30 spots or so.
I think what's interesting about Segura, too, if you look at the month-to-month with him, he actually finished very strong. So even though he started to, as you said, get up there in age a little bit for some of these middle infield guys, he had 4 home runs in August, 4 home runs in September, October, 12 RBI, 13 RBI. He was pretty steady there in those last 2 months. Usually the older players, if you're starting to see a little bit of bloom off the rose, typically it's because, you're going to see it in August and September. They start to wear down a little bit, but Segura looked pretty steady there. Obviously, sacrificed a little of the batting average in the first half, that 322 BA, for a little bit of 262 in the second half, but still, you put all that together, it's still pretty good, especially considering how late you're going to get him in drafts. Matt, give me another guy, too, later on for batting average for that specific category that might be able to help fantasy baseball owners out there.
I started with the goalpost like way back on this one, so I moved from Verdugo to like way in. This is if you've wanted Segura, you were banking on him, and then you got sniped, and then you weren't even happy with the rest of the things, so you just let it slide, and then now you're desperate. That's where you are with this guy, Nick Madrigal. This is not someone you want to go into a draft wanting to get. This is something where, he's your bench option, or is he your desperation option if you've missed out on speed? He is basically a one category guy, with a caveat of giving you a plus in another. He is a batting average guy pretty much all the way during his from 2018 in the minors, 306, 272, then 341, 331. He batted 340 with over 109 plate appearances, his first taste in the major leagues with the White Sox, and then 305 last year before getting injured. And injuries are a big part of that too. I think if everyone knew he was going to be healthy and hitting at the top of that Cubs lineup, he'd actually be being drafted significantly higher. Just like what people do with Andres Jimenez. It's basically the same thing there. You're getting no power, literally none, maybe one or two, but you're going to get some stolen bases, maybe a couple handfuls, which is nice. So if you were looking for batting average, this is about as empty batting average as it gets. But, people love Luis Arias, who's going to hit at the top of the Twins lineup, has some position eligibility, so he gives you that bonus of runs. I think I'd rather have the bonus of stolen bases, so I don't mind this as much. So, if you're desperate for batting average, I think Madrigal's pretty good at middle infield where it kind of dries up. There's really not that many stolen bases to be had. A lot of people usually think middle infield, there's tons of stolen bases. There's really not this season. So, he's not bad, especially in deep formats.
Well, here's the question for you, too. Do you think that the job is his if he's healthy going into the year, or do you think he ends up kind of sharing time? Because it's one thing to not offer you any power, but if you're playing every day, maybe you get some runs scored, you get some counting stats along with that stolen bases and along with that batting average. But again, if you become somebody who David Body or some other, Dixon Machado, somebody else kind of goes in there and starts stealing at bats away, what does that mean for Madrigal's value? Is he still worth that selection for you, or is that then time to fade him?
You see, I think that's the beauty part with Madrigal is I don't worry about that because he's either injured or he's playing. I don't foresee him. If he's not hitting for average, he's benched because that's what he offers. So I think if he's healthy, I think he's hitting well. He's worthless if he's not hitting well. So I'm not worried about his performance suffering. I think he will get the job. The whole thing with him is health. If he's healthy, he's giving you batting average, some stolen bases, and nothing else. If he's injured, he's giving you nothing at all. Maybe something that's a little better for Fab League, so you can maybe replace the man. But there's draft champions or draft and holds. It's deep enough where maybe you can take a shot there. But he's being drafted very late for a reason. But if you want to gamble on the health, he's definitely going to return value for where you get him.
All right, let's switch gears to on-base percentage because this is for more of the evolved player now, the ones that are out there doing the 5x5 and forget the batting average, but instead look for the OBP, which is honestly I prefer at this point as well. I think it's a little bit better indicator. So, Bubba, give me somebody for you from an OBP standpoint that's very appealing.
First, I'll clarify there's a lot more options at OBP than batting average because that's just a much more widespread deal. But the one thing that I will say is I almost picked this individual for batting average, but I decided to use him here. He's going a little less than pick 100, right around pick 100, give or take. And that's Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he's on a bad baseball team, but I don't care because he gets at bats and he's going to put up fantasy numbers. He hit 302 last year, but his OBP was 390. We saw a 377 OBP in 2019. He has a 10% walk rate in back-to-back seasons. The plate discipline skills have been pretty good his entire career throughout the minors as well, and now he's putting this together with a batting average skill as well. So he's going to hit for a great average. He's going to have a great eye at the plate. In reality, pitchers really don't need to pitch to him in Pittsburgh when you really break it all down, so he could probably walk more than he ever has. So it's just the little things with Brian Reynolds, plus he has power. He's going to help you in every category, basically. But his OBP skills are very, very high. More on I don't think he's going to go say 390 next year, but even that 377, 370 area is in the upper area of OBP people, and you're getting them close to pick 100, which I think is pretty darn elite. Now, given I'm using pick 100 in NFBC, that's not an OBP format. He'd probably be going much higher in OBP leagues, but you're getting the gist of it. This is a guy that's very, very good, and most people think of him as a batting average asset, but there's much more to that with Brian Reynolds.
And in 2019, that OBP was 377 on the button there. He had 16 home runs in that rookie season. Last year, ballooned up to 24 after the sophomore slump of 2020, which, again, short sample, always very difficult to gauge. But to me, Bubba, if Brian Reynolds was on a big market team, he would
Yep.
be 30 spots higher
Easily.
in ADP. Easily.
Easily.
100%. And it's funny. I mean, he still scored 93 runs last year, despite the fact that the Pirates, he still drove in 90 runs. So even if you marginalize those numbers a little bit this year, which I actually think the Pirates lineup might be a little better this year than last year, to be honest with you, still a tremendous talent. And you're right, maybe across the board, completely underrated, but in OBP leagues especially, I think a high-end guy, I think that 370 mark you're talking about is very achievable, and it gives you more than that. Well, that's fantastic. So give me a name here in the OBP world, Matt Williams, that you feel good about as well, targeting maybe as a mid-round guy.
I think this target is very strong coming in, especially this year. Michael Conforto, because he's coming off a bad year, which will depress his value anyway, and he's always more valuable in on-base percentage for his entire career. In the short season, he had led the league in line drives. He made improvements against left-handed hitters. Wasn't just pull. He went to the middle of the field. He went to opposite field. He just improved across the board. Last year, he just was pressing. He had all sorts of like soft tissue injuries. He was struggling versus left-handers. But all that being said, he still posted a 344 on base percentage, career 356.
Yeah.
So he's one of those guys, even like Christian Yelich. Even if he struggles, he gets on base. In on-base percentage leagues, you look at things differently. He'll have really depressed value this year, and I expect him to bounce back. Who knows what his market is once the lockout ends? Maybe he takes a 1-year deal to, try to return value. Goes somewhere like Citizens Bank Park. He goes somewhere where he can crank out a ton of home runs. So yeah, I think this is a great year to reinvest in Conforto, especially in on-base percentage leagues, because he's always been stronger in that format. And right now you can get him cheaper than ever.
Where would you want to drop him if you could? If you had your druthers, and I'm not even sure what druthers are. I don't think anyone really knows. But if you had them, Matt Williams, where would you want to put Conforto?
I mean, I'm a Mets fan. I don't
So
want to.
That's why
I don't want to put him in Philly. That would be a good spot. I mean, ideal. I can throw all the obvious spots up there. Like, I love him being Cincinnati or Coors Field, but they're not going to do it. There's no purpose. So maybe Chicago. Either really. I mean, the Cubs I thought were rebooting, but they're doing weird crap now. So who knows what they're up to? And the White Sox could always use another outfielder. So, but I think the Cubs maybe. I don't know who's really shopping. I think
a 1-year deal with the Cubs. I mean, playing Wrigley Field, that's not a terrible idea for.
Yeah, I think Wrigley, I think Philly are the two spots that make the most sense for me because they both could use him and would be willing to probably do it on a 1-year deal.
Philly especially could use him too. I would not be shocked to see them go after him, especially if you can get him on a 1-year deal. That would be a smart move. All right, Bubba, give me another guy in the OBP realm, somebody a little bit later that you think might be able to help out.
Well, Matt just went homer with his picks. I'm going homer with mine, and I'm going with Brandon Belt. The baby giraffe has been an OBP monster his entire year, or his entire career. Like most people look at last year where he hit 274 and 29 home runs and go, oh my goodness, he's amazing. And he's always been able to hit, but he's been AT&T'd, as I like to call it. But what he does do is walk and walk a lot. He's one of the best eyes of the plate you'll ever watch. Since 2015, he's walked at least 10% of the time. Every season, which is pretty darn good. Pretty much every year, but 1 year in his career, it's been 9% or better. So he's getting on base, and that's allowed him to have a 350 or so OBP or better almost every season, 340 or so in his entire career. So you're getting like a base 340 OBP when you walk into things. He's hitting for power this last year. Maybe that'll carry over the way they've reconfigured the ballpark to allow the airflow to change and be a little better there as well. It's just a matter of health every year with him. He gets hit on the wrist, it seems, all the time and breaks bones that way. It's just like the goofiest injuries. So that's why they don't concern me as much. They're not like, oblique strains and hamstrings. There's goofy injuries. But the dude's going around pick 235 again in non-OBP formats. But he's just an OBP monster. He's a gift. Every OBP league I've ever been in, I either draft him late as a corner infielder or I target him and someone else drafts him right before me as a corner infielder. He's a very big focus of mine because you can almost just pencil in, like I said, 340-ish with the upside for so much more. And now he's supplying power. It's quite the recipe for success with Brandon Belt.
I have to say, Brandon Belt, when he first came up to the big leagues, that 25 home run season, drove in 95 runs, scored 116. I mean, he looked like, he was going to be an absolute just monster in 2013 after that, right? And he just, even the minor leagues, the numbers were spectacular. And a lot of people have said over the years is the ballpark factor that really did him in, along with the injuries. Obviously, that hasn't helped either. But let's be honest, with the injuries and all the issues he's had staying on the field, is he still a good investment in your mind at the ADP? Because I understand it's an OBP league, and I understand in season-long roto you'll take your good stats wherever you get your quality stats, but is there enough quality stats in there for the amount of games if you're only getting, say, 100 games out of Brandon Belt?
I would say hopefully more than 100, yes. But I would say it
You
is
could
because
hope for more than 100, but 104,
hope in
112,
one hand, and you know what, it's fun.
156, then 2020, and 97 last year. So,
But I would say yes, just for the fact if you look at other first basemen going around him, he rates out very well in that grouping. And the first baseman after, like we could talk Jesus Aguilar like we did earlier, that's an option. But OBP wise, Belt kind of puts him out of the, like Aguilar's good OBP wise, but Belt still has him there. So I'll take my chances with Brandon Belt, yes.
all right, let's go back to Matt Williams here. Give me another OBP guy, Matt, that you got your eye on this year.
All right, Michael Conforto was not a homer pick. He's gone. This is a homer pick. Brandon Nimmo.
Oh, okay. This was the homer pick.
Incidentally, I got the Brandon Nimmo shirt on. If he was
that
healthy,
came free when he went to the ballpark, I assume, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If he was healthy, it's never happening. He should be like a 3rd-round pick in OBP leagues. No, because he would be like.
He was one of my favorite OBP late picks last year. I had him everywhere.
If you look at like what he does, I mean, like in his full power could be like, I mean, he hit 17 home runs before, he could steal 10 bases. His career OBP is 393. So no matter what, I mean, again, this is someone you joked about in 100 games with Bell. I mean, you're not getting a full season on Nimmo, but his runs created plus his last 4 years, 148, 115, 149, 137. He's like one of the most underrated players in baseball outs when people just don't understand. So in OBP formats, you have to plan around it. You have to plan around him not being there. But he is just so great in that format when he's there that fine, draft him and plan for someone else to sub in there. Maybe at a utility spot, have him and Brandon Belt. And maybe
if you draft Brandon Nimmo and Brandon Belt, I mean, just the Brandons there. You just make them one guy.
What can go wrong with Brandon squared?
Yeah, there you go. What you do is you hyphenate their name, Brandon Belt Nimmo, and you make them a married couple. And
Are you worried about Nimmo and Gancana coexisting?
I mean, I think they got Marte. He could miss some time too. So, I mean, I just assume they're out there when they're healthy and it's going to work itself out naturally. I don't think there's a platoon by any means coming.
I think Kana plays a lot of DH though, don't you guys?
Yeah, I think he could. They could do all sorts of things, and he's going to be. I really
play Nimmo at DH.
What they're doing with this
That's not a. You know what, Bubba? It's not a joke. That's not a terrible idea. You know, if they DH him twice a week, I don't think that's a terrible idea at all. And Matt, I feel your pain. I feel your pain, Matt, because Nimmo was a favorite of mine. I mean, I had him across the board last year in the OBP drafts I did, and it's just that frustration of missing time. But if you have a plan, then it's okay. Then you're doing all right. Let's move on to another category here, right? Because I think we've tapped all the OBP guys we have. So let's go to stolen bases. SBs, which are becoming a dying statistic, it feels like lately. I mean, you look at the number of stolen bases and the guys who stole 30 bags last year compared to, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, it's a very different ball game. And don't even talk to me about 20 years ago. Forget it. It's a totally different game. But even so, lately, before we even get into the individuals, Bubba, when you're talking about the category of stolen bases, are you somebody that's trying to go out there and target some of the elite 5 category studs that give you those steals too? Or are you somebody who would rather just, I could find competitive stolen bases later on, just get them at a value and maybe pluck a couple of the guys we're going to talk about next year later in the draft?
I try to go for the 5 category guys early. If I can, okay. I try to get 1. It's tough to get 2, but if I can get 2, that'd be amazing. At the same time, I don't want to reach on certain players, which many have talked about. The goal throughout drafting is I try not to get too many zeros in stolen bases until later in the draft. Now, given Matt and I are in a draft right now, and Vlad Guerrero fell to pick 12, so I took him. That's a 0 in steals, and you can build around that. But more often than not, my first 8, 9, 10 rounds, I'm trying to get a guy that contributes with some sort of stolen bases throughout, then just kind of accumulate it as you build your team.
All right, fair enough. So give me a name, Bubba, who's number 1 on your list here you want to talk about first in terms of some good value for stolen bases.
Well, anybody that's had the pleasure or the not so pleasure of listening to my podcast or follow me on Twitter knows how much I love Jazz Chism. So this had to be a guy, I had to bring him up at some point on this show, and it wasn't going to be batting average. So here we are at stolen bases. We get jazzy with it. 23 steals last year in 124 games. The dude, he's shown speed throughout the minors. The speed carried over greatly in his first full season with the Marlins in 2021, hitting towards the top of that order. He legit has 20-20 upside, like 18 homers and 23 steals in 124 games. Part of the injuries last year was COVID related, another sickness, I think from the shots, and then he actually had a hamstring injury. So let's say we get 140 games from Jazz. Now you're talking 20, maybe 20, 30 when it comes to Jazz Chism at pick 70. You get all these other guys early that you want to get. Now you have a potential another 2020 guy later on in your draft. I have a ton of Jazz Chism. I know he's controversial because some say the swing and miss isn't sustainable and so on and so forth. But I'll take my chances with Jazz because I have no reason not to play him in Miami.
In NFBC right now, he's going 75 overall, Jazz Chism. Matt, can we get somebody who is not related to Jazz Chism and get some of your take on him, just so we have a little, just balance to the program.
Some non-bias. I get it.
Some non-bias, not Bubba Chism Jr.
All right.
So your take on him.
My short take on Jazz is that, he again, I call him Kit Keller all the time. He loves to chase high fastballs. They show that Jacob deGrom home run like it's a plus, but it's really showcasing his worst weakness. I think he's amazing. He wants to hit the ball out of the park every single time. I think this year, rather than breakout, I'm just hoping for small incremental improvements to try to close up some of his holes. Either way, I think you still get the home runs and stolen bases. Maybe a little overdrafted just because I think the floor is a little scary. But, he offers something at second base not too many people do. So I can't really argue with it.
Yeah, Chism's a player that I like, just to, kind of throw that out there too.
It's more like if you take him, you might want to not take too many other risks or something, but, pick your poison. He's exciting.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, if I'm going to take a poison, it's going to be the poison pill for stolen bases. No, because that's the one where they're fading away. And this is a player that clearly can give you 30 if everything breaks his way. Even if he doesn't make enormous headway, if he makes small incremental improvements, as you're talking about, 30 stolen bases is well within his grasp. So I think if you're going to take a shot on somebody, that's the kind of player to take a shot on.
Really, he returns value as long as he doesn't get demoted or benched. Right. He probably can come at least close enough to returning value. Even
what works is the train moves, not the station, Matt Williams. That's how it works. All right, so Matt, give me one of your guys for stolen bases that you think might be somebody people should be targeting in their roto leagues.
My first guy is like such a gimme, so I'm going to talk about him for 2 seconds and alternate to someone else.
No.
it's Miles Straw. Everyone knows. He's the stolen base only guy kind of early, but he's a good one because he's going to give you a decent average, and I do not think he's ever going to be moved out of the leadoff spot there with the Guardians. So 30 bags, safe lineup spot. The guy I actually like more that I'd like to discuss because I think it's more useful is Ahmed Rosario. Batting second for the Guardians, hopefully the whole year. He's always been a pretty good hitter. He's just kind of off and on. He always has these good second halves. Last year he batted 282. A couple years ago batted 287. His XBA is always kind of right up there. The problem with him is he's always been fast, but he's never been really good at stealing stolen bases. The thing that I love about him is in 2018, he stole 24 bags, got caught 11 times. 2019, stole 19, got caught 10 times. Last year, stole 13, never caught once. So I'm hoping maybe he's still really young. Everyone thinks this kid's probably 30 because he's been around forever. He's 26. So hopefully he gets more comfortable, continues to grow. That 13-0 maybe, becomes, again, 24-0. Maybe, he can go wild if he can learn how to steal a little more. He has Straw there for a whole offseason. J-Ram knows how to steal a bag. So, yeah, I think a middle infield, if you missed out, he's going at a good spot. I think he gives you a little bit of everything. He's like a poor man's Francisco Lindor, kind of.
Oh, well, that would be nice. I'd like to see Lindor be a poor man's Francisco Lindor after the first half of last year. I'll take what I can get, Maddie. All right, as we continue on here, we're talking about stolen bases right now, guys that can help you. We're talking about specific hitters for specific categories that you might want to target at some point in time in your drafts. Even though Matt does not like this from a philosophical standpoint, he's still a good guy and for charity playing ball, and you should play ball for charity too. Go support PitchCon right now. Head over to pitcherlist.com and make your donation there. Again, we're helping Feeding America, so do something good, even if it's $5, if it's $10. Go to pitcherlist.com/pitchcon, and you can see the landing page there to go ahead and make that donation to help Feeding America. It's a good cause. Actually, it's a great cause. So go out there and do your part. Again, it doesn't have to be a big donation, but it can be a big donation. I know Bubba likes to throw the money around, that's for sure. So, Bubba, throw some money around on stolen bases. Give me a guy that you think can absolutely help you later on, potentially, in that category.
Well, you wanted like a Lindor Jr. I got your Jazz Chism Jr. right here. Colton Wong. He's going about 100 picks after Jazz Chisholm. And when he went over to Milwaukee last season, people were like, oh, it's crazy. He's not that good, blah, blah, blah. It worked out pretty darn good. 14 homers, 12 steals, 272. Those 12 steals is tremendous. After 24 in 2019, we saw 15 and 20 back in 2015 and 2014. He's going to be hitting towards the top of that Milwaukee lineup. They're going to give him the green light. And he did all that in 116 games last year because he was battling an injury as well. So if he gets back to 148 games or so like he did in 2019, that'll be tremendous. Health has been a concern, but a lot of those years weren't health. You look at the small totals in St. Louis. He was platooning and playing some goofy roles in that.
I don't feel like they ever wanted him to run, though,
exactly.
Still.
They messed
feel like
with
that was
him a lot.
always the problem. It's like they had this guy and this asset that they just never wanted to use, and it didn't help that he was never healthy either. But I mean,
they found ways to get him out of the way.
Right? That's true. It's absolutely what it feels like. So 12 stolen bases last year for Colton Wong. If you had to pinpoint, let's say, a number of games played, another stolen bases this year, what would it be for Colton Wong?
140 games and 17 stolen bases.
All right, I will take that. I'll sign that up. What's the batting average there? 268?
Yeah, it's fair. At 265, 265-ish, give or take, yeah.
All right, and you look in Miller Park, obviously, or whatever the hell it's called today. 14
family something.
It's really
Great
really
American
ridiculous.
Family or something.
I can't. You know what? I'm just not going to do it because I know it's going to change. By the time I remember what it is, it's going to be something else. So I'm just going to call it Miller Park for the rest of my life. I don't care. Whatever it is, that's what I'm calling the ballparks from now on. But yeah, if it feels like Colton Wong is finally getting that opportunity, any concerns at all for playing time with Colton Wong in this team? No.
Now you got Escobar out of the way. You got Luis Urias moving over to third base, which could have been a potential concern at one point in time. Or he moves over to shortstop. They have options there where Colton Wong should be just fine when it comes to playing time.
Are you trying to tell me you don't believe in the Keston Hiura
Oh, I was
resurgence?
just gonna ask you, man. I was gonna say I want to go do member berries with you guys. Go back to 2020, talk about Keston Hiura. What happened?
You guys you guys are talking about Jazz Chisholm swing and miss. Let's go to Keston here, and then we can
But
end the debate right there.
the weird thing about Keston Hiura was the whole point was this guy could win a batting title. He makes such great contract. Then he got home run happy, and it's just never been the same since.
Someone just needs to go bring him a live chicken in the locker room so we can figure it out like Pedro Serrano. That's what he needs.
I don't know what it is, but it's very, very strange. I don't know. And yes, Paul Sporer supporting us saying Jacobs Field for life. I agree with you, Sporer. Exactly. I mean, come on, man. Some good names there. All right, Matt Williams, give me another guy, another name in the stolen base category that can help out some folks.
All right, this guy is going pretty late. Jorge Mateo came over, escaped Oakland and San Diego. We were always hoping for him to get an opportunity. Never did. Baltimore. They have no other options. It's a great spot for him. 247, not too good, but again, 4 home runs, 10 stolen bases down the stretch. Looked pretty good. Only struck out 26.3% of the time, which has never been a huge problem for him. And he has to contend now with the Ramon Urias and Roughnedo. You're taking him late enough. Again, better in fab leagues if you can move on if he somehow does not make it. But this guy once stole 71 bases at one level, and then he moved up to another level and stole 11 in that same year. 82 stolen bases in 1 year. Hasn't done that recently, but in recent seasons he's stolen 25 and 24 in the minor leagues. So he's someone that in Baltimore they want to see what they have, and they don't want to spend a lot of money to do it. So I think that they saw a little spark with Mateo. He should get every opportunity. I liked what I saw down the stretch. So yeah, give him a ride, because if he's in there for an entire season, he's got a little bit of pop. I mean, he can give you 5 to 10 home runs. Like, that's not a zero. But the stolen base potential is real. So he really doesn't have to worry about anything. Like Ruffin Odor, some of those other guys, maybe they'll get killed by the weird Grand Canyon they just put in left field. Mateo doesn't have to worry about that. That probably helps him, more ground for the balls to fly around. So
just Odor on the roster helps him.
But,
I mean,
but Jorge Mateo.
Enough of that guy. Enough already. I don't want to see that guy anymore. No more. Gonna give him the big act.
But he's only 2,000 on DraftKings tomorrow, Joe. Come on.
Oh man! Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. All right, let's switch gears here from the speed to the power. Let's talk a little home runs here. Go ahead. Let's start with you, Bubba. Give me a guy for home runs that you want to take there. It might be a good value for folks.
It might not be a value per se, but I think what you can get with Aaron Judge, I'm buying back in. One full season, I'm buying back in. The yoga thing, I talked about it with Toby on one of our shows, that he did yoga. I think Stanton was supposed to start doing it with them. It's because they've been having so many muscle injuries and other things, which makes sense. You shouldn't be a bodybuilder. I know we've talked about it plenty of times, Joe.
Oh my God. I mean, how many times have I said it? I mean, it's very important.
I'm trying to do yoga. DDP yoga, I've heard, is great. I can't.
Dude, I've done the DDP yoga, but I do a little yoga on the side, maybe not as much as Alex Chamberlain out there shirtless doing the hot yoga in Hawaii. And if you miss that, oh boy, you missed something. But I will say that, I mean, I think this is like a no-brainer at this point. And I actually took a shot on him last year, and I'm glad that I did, because it's always a risky thing to take these guys who are, like you said, these muscle-bound guys that continuously have the same kind of injuries, but maybe we're starting to get to a better place with all this.
Yeah, it's just the reason why I'm buying back in is because I think he is going to be healthy now with these gains. And we've seen with Aaron Judge, it's the health's been the concern, because if you look at any metric of his hit tool, he's one of the most elite hitters in baseball, like per plate appearance and everything. It's just a matter of getting those plate appearances, and I think we're pretty much locked into it now. We saw 39 home runs last year. A few years ago when he played a ton of games, he had 52 home runs. This is, with home runs dwindling without steroids and everything these days, he's one of the handful of guys that you could be confident but feel good about potentially getting 40, 45 home runs if he stays healthy again this year. And I think that's a big boost compared to going for like a bunch of 20, 25 home run type guys. So it's a guy I'm much more inclined to take the chance on than I have been in years past.
NFBC 38 is the ADP. I think that's a fantastic number. There's a lot of early values. Lindor is one over 45. I think Aaron Judge is one too. That if you even did decide to go early on that stud pitcher, I think you almost have to take a shot on a guy like Aaron Judge. Would you agree?
The one thing you mentioned, which I think some people will like, don't take power early because they were like, power is always available late. That's the thing.
No, it's not.
It's not. Especially Judge gives you that. He gives you a nice batting average. Yep. I mean, his in-zone contact jumped from 78, 84, 84.2, but last season he took the pitches out of the zone. He jumped from 40 to 39% to 56.7. His swinging strike rate went down by 3 percentage points. I mean, there's no reason for that not to stick around. And usually you can't get that kind of power with that kind of batting average. I mean, you can't find it. So, he's very underrated.
Yep.
All right.
Definitely.
Let's give you somebody who's a little bit further down the ADP scale there, Matt Williams. Who you got?
Spore doesn't know about coming up short, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there.
No,
Mr. Tall guy with the short jokes.
I like Hunter Renfroe.
Which, by the way, I just want to point out, Matt's still coming off of NFL season because he spent it with a W.
Oh, did I?
You did. I gave you a pass, but it was too funny.
How do you know? I meant Hunter Renfroe. He's,
Well, he's very reliable. I mean, if you're in those, 5x5 where,
he's
you
an
get
athlete.
Point per reception, I think you're pretty good there. But I'm glad you're talking about Hunter Renfroe because
we're still on stolen bases.
I'm perplexed that the Red Sox jettisoned him, and I am in love with the landing spot, Matt. So talk to me about Hunter Renfroe.
Right before the lockout, this trade happens. Everyone's like, "What?
Why?" All I can think of is, why did they do that
at the wire?
Do they know something we don't?
Is
he in a Ponzi scheme or something? Is he going to get arrested? I have no idea why they made this move. I still can't figure it out.
I mean, this is a very simple breakdown. It's he's always been able to hit the long ball. He finally moved from San Diego to Boston, did great there. And for some reason, they gifted him an even better park. So yeah, I absolutely love it. He gives you, again, I believe in the 259. I think that he can stick around there. You're more likely coming back down maybe south of 250, but it's not Joey Gallo land. No. You're not going to be batting 205, and he's going to give you 30 plus home runs. So yeah, he's just a nice, safe guy who should have a decent amount of runs, a ton of RBIs in Milwaukee. So yeah, Renfroe, if you're running dry on power, look his way in the middle rounds. It's just a nice, safe guy that you can kind of rely on.
NFBC ADP 167 for Renfroe right now on CBS. You don't even want to know what it is. It's 292. I think that number is still a work in progress. Over on Fantasy Pros, the composite number is 182, which
that's more bad. Yeah,
I probably is more likely what you're going to get. But man, I just, like I said, I don't get this. And as soon as he said it was Milwaukee, I was like, yes, let's go. I mean, give me this guy in Milwaukee. And that's a great landing spot for him. All right, give me a guy not named Aaron Judge. Give me somebody else.
I know. I cheat. I'm trying to have fun around here.
It's funny because you're either like cheating or you're going so far down the trough that
I keep you on your toes.
I know.
I like your toes.
They also play football. If you can pull that off.
I realize I wrote the same person down as Matt, so I'll leave that one for Matt. I'm going to pivot here. And my guy's going around pick 185 to 190 in NFBCs.
We just did this podcast earlier. If you want, go listen to the Fantasy Pros podcast. We just did 10 late round sluggers.
And this wasn't one of them. This wasn't because the one.
You gave look at you.
Because the one on that podcast was all post 200. So this one's just before that.
Right, so
and this is because
what you're telling me.
Yes, I'm cheating, but this is for Sporer, who believes that ageism is real in fantasy baseball, and that's why Nelson Cruz is going way too late in drafts. I don't care who you are. I know everyone's waiting for him to fall off. He's 40 years old. Like, I get it. Like, I'm 38, and I feel like I'm going to fall off every time I get out of bed in the morning. I understand. But this guy is amazing. And when you can talk about 32 home runs last year in 140 games, some of which were in that wonderful building called the Trop, this guy's a perennial 30-plus home run guy with 40 home run upside. He's done it every season since 2014. You know, there's a couple of additives probably in the tank at that point in time. But bottom line is the guy rakes, hits for a decent average. Wherever he signs, he's going to play every day as the DH. There's going to be 15 new openings, or maybe, let's say 7 or 8 potentially new openings in the National League. He's going to play next year. And at pick 188, even if he doesn't, if you're drafting early, this is a steal. Because if he goes and signs somewhere nice, say out of nowhere he goes and signs at Colorado or something, which you never know, he's going to fly up ADP boards. So Nelson Cruz, home runs, and he helps you everywhere else but steals. So go enjoy.
All right, there you have it. All right, go ahead, Matt Williams. He cleared the deck for you with your second pick for home runs later in the draft.
It's very, very controversial, I'll say, player. I mean, people are either in on this or they're completely against it. Bobby Dalbec, Robert Dalbec, the third. Sounds good. He's not a third or anything. He had this big hot streak at the end, which most people tabbed as a hot streak. People thought, all right, they brought in Kyle Schwarber to replace this guy. He's going to be benched. And that, I believe, was the plan. I think everyone knows that was the plan. Bobby Dalbec knew it was the plan. But Kyle Schwarber came over and out of the kindness of his heart decided to help Bobby Dalbec. They looked at his batting. He looked at him in the batting cage and gave him some pointers to simplify his swing. Less checkpoints, things to time. They told him that, like, look for your pitch, be aggressive for your pitch. And it just completely turned around as soon as he taught him all those things. It just kind of like freed up his mind. I don't know if he was overthinking it, but he just tore it down the stretch. The problem is that he had it very bad at the end. They like pretty much benched him in the playoffs. He's going to be streaky, but learning things like that and adjustments in season is tricky. It's amazing anyone can make that kind of a turnaround in season anyway, but this guy's a 50 home run bat if he can turn it on. And the strikeouts, even though they were bad, dramatically decreased. So we just need that to kind of stick around. This is all ADP dependent. The momentum for him being a sleeper is picking up sleeper. I know people hate that term, but it's picking up. And if ADP drags him to a place at a certain place, it may not be worth it anymore because of the downside. You don't know. He has Tristan Casas. I don't know how to say his last name. If anyone can help me out with that.
I've heard Cassis, but I could be wrong.
You're a very talented guy. So
let's just call him Chism.
Yeah.
No, there's only one Chism. There's only one Chism. Do not you dare. There's only one.
But I mean, there's also a route here where he just gets traded. The Red Sox know they have other routes they can go. They can trade. Right. They can trade Dalbec. But the thing here is, he could be a 50 home run bat with batting average not as low as Joey Gallo in middle infield. So I think he's well worth the gamble where he's currently going. You don't have to be sold.
227 is currently where he's going in FBC.
Yeah, so I mean, you can grab him for your corner infielder, and if you're aggressive, he could even
Well, here's one I'll put you, because actually Bubba and I on the podcast today talked about these two guys. Would you rather have Bobby Dalbec or would you ever have Adam Duvall?
Oh, it would depend on my need.
Because that was funny. Did you see what happened there, Bubba?
Yeah,
you went,
wait.
No, because for me,
a WWE move.
First base, I like to fill earlier, and then they have that glob of like 7 or 8 that are all the same guy. It just depends on how I did in that area. Adam Duvall, I'm much more confident in that will be in the majors the entire season, but I no doubt think that Bobby Dalbec has a significantly higher ceiling. I will have more Dalbec shares than Duvall shares if that tips my hand in any way. I think it's a better asset to be able to play first base and corner than to just be another outfielder. So yeah, I mean, I think if I had to place money, who's going to have a better year, I'd have to bet my house. I'll probably bet it on Duvall. But if I'm playing in a few fantasy contests and I want to take a shot on some upside, I like Dalbec.
All right, let's go to runs because at the end of the day, that's what baseball's all about. So, Bubba, give me a guy you're looking at as a good value for the runs category this year in 2022.
Yeah, just a quick precursor. Focused on top of the order, people. If you're looking for a run scored, that's going
If
to be
we
the
still have to
the
tell
big
people
thing.
that I'm
I'm
concerned. But
just
you know
saying.
what? It's
Hey,
funny.
we write a
Is
book every year, Joe, that
It's
tells people
true.
things. So
That's true, and sometimes, but it really does matter. It's I just had this conversation with Matt Harmon actually on another show about ecosystems too, and looking for players in good lineups. The same thing in the NFL, same thing in Major League Baseball. You're looking for teams that score at the end of the day, and put some equity in that. And then if you can put equity into the guys at the top of those orders, then you're already ahead of the game, and it's worth paying a
Yep.
premium, especially in auction drafts for those guys. So who's one of those guys for you that kind of fits that bill, but is coming at a pretty good ADP, relatively speaking?
Jonathan India, folks, the NL Rookie
Oh,
of the Year. He's
terrific,
going around pick
terrific
92
player.
right now in NFBC leagues. 21 homers, 12 steals last year, 98 runs scored. There was a point where he was getting demoted, and he came back
That's
due to an
right.
injury and just ran away with the job. Hit 269. But the important thing, if you this is going to be an OBP guy too, 376 OBP, an 11.3% walk rate. He's had a double-digit walk rate basically his entire career, even in the minors. So he's got great plate discipline, hits for average, a little bit of pop, but it's that plate discipline, the ability to get on base in front of your Winkers, your Vottos, and company there that's going to score a ton of runs. Literally, I wouldn't be shocked if we see 100+ runs scored from India this year, and you're going to get them, between picks 90 and 100, which is pretty darn good because usually you're thinking your Mookie Betts of the world, these guys early in the draft. You're getting Great American Small Park for 81 games a year. We're going to see so many Coors Field-like scores. India's going to be a big factor of that. So I think he's a great price. And honestly, I thought he'd be moving up higher in drafts by now, but he's still
Me
kind of
too.
just
I
hanging
think
out.
he will. I think with a good spring too, if we get spring, I could see him flying
Just
up a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know. I know. All right, go ahead, Matt. Give me a guy for run score that you have your eye on this year.
Jake Cronenworth, who
Another good one.
I think as his actual talent, he's being drafted a little high. I think he's being floated by the position eligibility, which is a big deal. So I think it's all fair. But if you were looking for someone for runs, he scored like 93 last year. He batted up and down the entire lineup for the Padres. He literally batted in every single spot, 1 through 9. But he settled in mostly batting third with 280 of his plate appearances. That's by far the place he batted the most. So if you actually look currently on Roster Resource or somewhere, you look at their lineup, it's really not as exciting as you want it to be. They're going to add someone else. I don't think they're going to have Nomar Mazara and Profar in there every single day, but he's probably still going to be batting right in the middle of that lineup. And as far as someone you can count on to give you over 90 runs, he's about as late as you can get. And if you can get someone giving you 90 to 100 runs in like 3 different positions, that's pretty solid. So yeah, I think Cronenworth's pretty good. Little power, little speed, tons of runs.
Matt, let's stick with you. Give me your other name here, your last name for run scored.
Charlie Blackmon, got to be the most underrated player in fantasy as far as runs scored or just counting stats because he's just so boring and everyone's just like waiting for the wheels to fall off. He's not what he was. The speed is gone. The power is a little down, but he's still going to give you a really beautiful batting average, and he's going to bat at the very top of that lineup because he's untradeable. No one can trade him. Rob Silver was actually on here earlier. He was touting him up. I had tweeted before. It's just he's going so late. I mean, dramatically late. He's going 100 picks after Eddie Rosario, and for me, that's a little too much. He's going to give you, I think, last year he had 76 runs and 78 RBIs and 582 plate appearances. I think he's still good for maybe even 90. You're going to score runs with the Colorado Rockies. So yeah, where he's going, there's really no one approaching what he can give you in runs scored for how late he's going.
All right, Bubba, let's wrap things up here. Give me your last guy here for run score that you're targeting maybe later in the draft.
There's a great offense known as the Boston Red Sox, and Enrique Hernandez leading off for the Boston Red Sox, going around pick 222. He scored you 84 runs last season. I think this offense will be even better this year with maybe Duran taking the next step. You have Devers, you have Bogarts, JD Martinez. If Verdugo gets going, as Matt talked about earlier, I think we have another big year coming from Enrique at a great discount. He's one of the better, I think, late round runs, power. So like just a great pick altogether, middle infield and outfield eligible. So I'm going with Enrique Hernandez.
There you go. KC Bubba, Matt Williams, great stuff as always, my friends. Those have been some hitters to target later in your drafts for specific categories. You can follow these boys over on Twitter as well and get more information from them. They're always available. And also, don't forget, go over and support PitchCon. We are helping Feeding America. If you head over to pitcherlist.com/PitchCon, you can make your donation. It doesn't have to be a big donation. Just give something. You're enjoying the baseball talk. That's why we're here. We're here for the good cause, not just to talk baseball, which is what we love to do, but we love helping people also. And special shout out again to Nick Pollock for organizing all of this. And look at us. Even though they started us late, we still ended on time because we are professionals. That's what we are. We're going to turn it over to some more professionals.
There's
right
3
here.
hosts on this screen right now.
That's
We all
right.
know the drill.
Yeah, we know how to keep it moving.
Right there at 7:01. Right there, Nick Pollock. How you like that? By the way,
guys.
Nick Pollock, I got to say, letting the hair grow
Congrats to
out.
you.
Very good.
Oh, and this
You
is
look
the
tremendous.
PL7 hair.
Yeah.
I told the staff in, I think, December that I was going to grow it out until I did shave, though. That was a little too much.
See, when Joe and I get busy and stressed out, we lose our hair. You grow your hair. It's kind of a
I think
bad
the hairline
trade-off.
is receding, though. That's the
it's
one
not a-
problem.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we don't want to hear it.
Thank you guys so much for this. Really,
Thank you.
like pros, as you mentioned. And really, thanks so much for everybody contributing. We're getting close to 2,500 now, which is phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Let's hit it before the end of this presentation with this next one. But yeah, Joe, Matt, KC, it's great to see you guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Dairy
Good luck.
Queen.